What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q from Retro Q Gaming, back at it again. Here we are with our 49th episode of our Quack experimental podcast. Now, before we go any further, hit all these many topics that we're going to talk about this week, we're going to address the elephant in the room. Yes, you may notice I'm sporting a little bit of a different garb tonight, mainly because my lovely, beautiful, exceptionally stylish meme podcast jacket, unfortunately, it took a little bit of a hit this weekend. It is a suede jacket, because why wouldn't it be? But it got ever so slightly rained on. Now, when I say slightly rained on, it's the lightest of drizzle. But of course, we know that suede, even in light drizzle, for even just a couple of minutes at max, maybe 2 minutes at most, well, precautions have to be taken. So yes, we're sporting some beautiful, lovely little high protective gear. Because why wouldn't we be? Gotta keep it safe. Remember that. Anyway, let's get rocking and or rolling, depending on what you prefer to do. And we're going to talk about the big one that's going on this week. Probably the highest profile news altogether. We have E3 2020. Now, amidst all the coronavirus and everything going around and publishers pulling out, some of them for health concerns, some of them not for health concerns, but, well, it's official. Everyone was wondering at first, would it fully affect E3 to the point where it was going to be cancelled, or at least postponed until next year? Because, let's face it, even if E3 does go away this year, it's not going to be cancelled, even though maybe, potentially, it should be. But yes, it's official. The ESA has come out and cancelled E3 for 2020, and yeah, there's no surprise there. Most people, most publishers, most developers, manufacturers, blah blah blah, are citing health concerns, which is 100% completely valid if you ask me. No one should ever hold anyone against it for putting the safety of their employees first and paramount and whatnot, but it goes back to what we're going to look at next, which is the fact that everyone else, all these other developers, publishers, manufacturers, whoever it is, they still have lots of, well, let's face it, E3 is only a couple of months away. I'm sure they've had many plans, possibly presentations in mind, whatever it is, for, well, what to do, what to reveal, what to talk about on stage and all that. And many of these publishers and developers are exploring other avenues, as they call it. Basically, they're trying to come up with a whole digital presentation. Maybe they're just going to hold E3 as a digital kind of weekend showcase this year. And, well, we'll see how it goes. No one has really talked about it too much yet. They've all just said they're exploring other avenues and whatnot about how to announce it to people. But pretty much it's arguably almost confirmed that everyone is going with a whole digital presentation. So expect lots of Xbox Direct, expect no PlayStation Direct, expect a Nintendo Direct, expect a Devolver Digital Direct, expect a fucking EA Direct, a Bethesda Direct, a Direct, and yes, we'll still basically have our E3 in 2020. I'm sure it will be back next year. This is basically just a one-off blip, even if E3's kind of appeal is waning the last few years, year on year even at that. Well, it's still a fairly big show, and it's relatively important, despite what many people will tell you. But anyway, I'm sure we'll see it next year, and in the meantime, we have all these directs to look forward to. But sticking with all the public health concerns and coronavirus and whatnot, we've got some interesting news and interesting developments coming straight out of the US at this point, which is something you don't hear too often because, well, it's a pretty memed here nation. Now, what you typically hear a lot of the time from people in the US, if you talk to them a lot, is still in 2020, many of them have ISP data caps. Now, I'm not talking a phone data cap, like, for example, my phone data plan, my mobile phone data plan, it gives me unlimited 4G. So, I mean, I can use pretty much whatever I want and never hit any type of real cap. But you have, in some parts of the world, mainly the US, you have internet ISPs, home ISPs, that give you data caps. So maybe if you go over a certain gigabyte allotment or maybe terabyte allotment or whatever, maybe they'll charge you per gigabyte or something like that over it, or they will throttle your speed completely. Now, all of this is anti-consumer as fuck, obviously, and Well, ISPs claim that there's reasons and legitimate concerns and legitimate reasons to have all this stuff. Now, we're going to pretty much just expose why that's all a lie. Basically, everyone knew it was a lie anyway, but let's just go with it. So, as we all know, they're not real limitations. They're just completely artificial to make money and kind of flex control and whatnot too. After all, if you're the only ISP in the area, you have a monopoly on it, and you can just say, hey, you have a choice, 100 gigabyte cap or GTFO. Whereas if there's multiple different ISPs, they can up the cap, there's competition, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Now, some of the more notorious ones for this in the US are AT&T and Comcast. However, with the whole incentive to stay inside and, well, I believe they call it self-isolation or self-quarantine or something along those lines due to potential coronavirus, well, AT&T and Comcast have completely removed all artificial data caps with everyone who is subscribed to them or whatever you want to, like getting their service. Now, the reason for this is because everyone is stuck inside, or it's designed to help people and give them incentive and drive to stay inside. After all, if you're worried about what you can watch in 1 month on Netflix because you've got a data cap, well, at least now if you know the data cap is gone, you might be just more inclined to sit down and watch the entire thing. Maybe spend it all on YouTube watching your boy, one and only. But, it's a legitimate concern for these anti-consumer bullshit corporations. Now, remember, companies are also, to coincide with this kind of thing, companies are also releasing digital products on digital services, months earlier than planned. For example, Disney Plus is releasing Frozen 2 and Star Wars Episode 9. These are months ahead of schedule, so it's incentive for people to do this. Although, I will say this, if you look into the pretty much shadiness of the Frozen 2 announcement, it's a little bit more complex than that because, well, let's face it, Disney announced that, from what I understand at least anyway, and what I've read, I haven't done too much digging into it, but they announced that they're going to be releasing Frozen 2 early. Then they quietly announce a bunch of like Disney college tuitions, internships, blah, 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 this kind of thing are now completely cut. And then straight away they release Frozen 2 right after it. Of course, Frozen 2 gets all the hype because, well, that's how the media works. But Star Wars Episode 9, well, no one seems to really give a shit about that other than the delusional fanboys. And, well, I'm going to get around to watching it eventually. But there was a time in my life where new Star Wars meant you drop everything. Now, when a new Star Wars comes out, you drop nothing except for Star Wars. So, yeah. But you see the point anyway. Companies are doing all of this. It makes me believe, or really, really want to hope. Now, most of these companies don't work on the weekends. So possibly the earliest that the next thing I'm going to say might happen could be tomorrow, Monday, or maybe Tuesday on Paddy's Day. That's right, it's Paddy, not Patty. Anyone who says that will be burned in oil and have their fat sold as soap. But back to the point. Who knows, maybe Bethesda will launch Doom Eternal digitally a few days early. I really fucking hope so, because I am so hyped for that game, and my entire week, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is just up in the air of existential crisis waiting on Doom Eternal. But anyway, it really just goes to show how anti-consumer and how controlling these data caps are. They are completely a lie, they're completely artificial, and it's just absolute bullshit. It just needs to go away, fuck off and die. I feel sorry for those of you with third world internet, like you Americans out there. But some of us here in the real world, well, we have real world internet. Sure, I might not have the best upload speed. I have a decent download speed. But I may not have the best upload speed. But, well, I have a proper unlimited data plan. And, well, mobile, or not even mobile data plan. But I have a proper internet home plan. And let's face it, 350 MB download is decent. That's 35 real world megabyte, because I hate this megabyte shit. But at the same time, I may only have a 24 meg upload, but, well, realistically, that gives me exceptionally high quality streams, which I'm happy with. because when you look at all the different bit rates and whatnot too, I consistently stream at 16,000 kbps. So that's very, very high quality. 1080p, 60 FPS with extra nice quality. And I can do all that even if I only have 24. Sure, it's not 1 gig up, 1 gig down, but hey, for now, until I can get better, this'll do me. But speaking of things that will gladly do me, we're not talking about Norwegian Sundares here, but, well, we have Doom 64. And we have some really, really interesting stuff when it comes to Doom 64. Now, we all know that Doom 64 is going to be a pre-order bonus later this week when Doom Eternal comes out. It's going to be on PC, the only one that matters, and as well as Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation, but who gives a shit about those? Now, interestingly enough, it's actually going to have a new chapter included in all the different versions of it. And based on the new engine that they had to port it over into in order to bring it out on all these modern platforms, the engine caps out and can, in theory, run, if you have the hardware, at up to 1000 FPS. That's right, 1000 frames per second. Now, with Doom 64, this is a very real possibility because, well, it's Doom 64. Have you seen it? It's an N64 game, so it's going to be very lightweight, and typically most game engines will cap out at about 300 FPS. So it's going to be interesting. I know I'm going to try this out anyway. I'm looking forward to playing Doom 64. I haven't done it since the N64 was current, but yeah, I'm looking forward to playing Doom 64 on PC, and I'm going to uncheck my G-Sync, and we're going to see just how high we can get that frame rate. I'm predicting the upper echelons of the hundreds. I'm talking 800, 900, who knows, maybe I'll even hit that quadruple digits. That would be pretty beast. Now, in theory, this is kind of a knock-on effect from Doom Eternal, because Doom Eternal also breaks the 300 FPS cap and has the same engine that runs at 1000 FPS. Now, of course, you will never get Doom Eternal running at 1000 FPS. Even if you have something like an RTX Titan and you have it drop down to like a standard definition resolution and all the quality settings down on their lowest form, which would still be higher than the Switch, by the way, well, you're still only pushing about 400 or 500 FPS. And this is kind of really, really exciting for some reason. And that reason, of course, is that the system requirements for Doom Eternal are fairly high. Now, they're only a little bit higher than Doom 2016 in 2016. But, of course, that was running on ID Tech 6, which is an extremely optimized engine. This one, Doom Eternal, is running on, well, you guessed it, ID Tech 7, which is even more optimized and can give even more high quality visuals, which again in turn links with the high visual quality and high frame rate and high system requirements. For example, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Actually, you know what? It's in another segment here. We'll talk about the system requirements a little bit later. But anyway, Doom 64, 1000 FPS. Doom Eternal, who knows? We'll see later this week. I can't fucking wait. What a day for Cottonmouth, eh? Anyway, back to our next topic. It's only going to be a little one because, well, I made a dedicated video on this earlier on in the week. And I just want to bring up ever so briefly, yet again, that Horizon Zero Dawn, aka Horizon Zero Awards, is coming to PC. It is an official PC native version. It is not the PlayStation Now streamed crap, but it is a proper native PC version from Guerrilla. Now, what's really, really funny about this is, of course, it's going to be the best version of the game. And yes, the fanboys are falling apart, and it is glorious. So glorious. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And that's basically it. That's basically the entire point of this segment. It's going to be out at some point in summer of this year. Did it say summer? Yes, it is. It's at some point in summer of this year. I may pick it up eventually because, well, I can play that stuff at a nice high quality and high frame rate that a console could never achieve. But, yeah, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll pick it up on Steam in a sale because, well, I'm not really interested in the game at all. But I might be inclined to do so, given a Steam sale. But hey, stay salty, fanboys. You fuel me on this. And it is delicious, is all I will say. But speaking of salty fanboys, Well, I guess in a way it kind of does, because we have lawsuits to talk about. Specifically, Nintendo, when it comes to a lawsuit this time. Because you might remember the Joy-Cons and how they are notorious for being poorly made and have stick drift, particularly in the left Joy-Con where the stick will drift either left or right. Of course, this was all compounded when the Switch Lite came out, and within 1.5 days, I can't even call them Joy-Cons on that one, but the shitty design on the shitty hardware drifted about 1 day after launch. Yikes. And remember, that was a redesign about 2 years later. Now, what originally happened with this was it was kind of slightly ruled against Nintendo. Well, it was ruled against Nintendo down the line now, but Nintendo actually requested to have the entire case dismissed against them. But this was rejected. Thank God, because, well, if you design something poorly, you should face the ramifications from it. Now, this case is going to proceed, of course, with the likes of battles like this. You do typically have to wait months and months and months, if not years and years and years, to get anywhere. We don't know what's going to happen down the line. We don't know who's going to win. We don't know if it got rejected, dismissed, who's blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Personally, I do think Nintendo should lose this because, oh, Q, you're just a Nintendo hater. No, when you design something poorly and affects a large amount of the population. And not to mention the fact that they went out of their way to, in certain regions at least anyway, fix Joy-Con drift for free, even outside of warranty. If that doesn't admit guilt a lot of the time, oh no, they're just being good, no, that's not how these companies work. Nintendo are so good. No, that's not how these companies work. Remember when Microsoft did the Red Ring of Death? Yeah. Would have been worse if they didn't. Why? Because they admitted, in a sense, that they fucked up. Booyah. And speaking of people, companies, places, things, whatever it is that fucked up, we have Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 has just recently launched on Steam. Earlier this week, on the 13th. Now, of course, when I made these notes, this little bit was unknown, but now it's not so much the case. The game has fully launched and we found out these details in the meantime. But we can convert it and switch it up just a little bit. So we have Borderlands 3 after 6 months of Epic Games Store timed exclusivity, which was a multi-million-dollar deal. Remember that? So they took multiple millions of dollars in order to do so. And then, of course, any potential sales that they got on the Epic Games Store as well after the specific amount of copies that were bought in advance by Epic. Well, we were curious to see what price Borderlands 3 would launch at. Now, when you look at the likes of Metro Exodus, the first big high-profile game to run out its timed exclusivity, its paid timed exclusivity, I do want to reiterate, on the Epic Games Store, that one launched at €40, and it had a sale. I believe it was 50% off straight away, or something along those lines. I made a video about it a few weeks ago. I don't really remember. It's Metro Exodus. It's kind of forgettable to me, other than maybe the visuals. But back to the point here. So, Epic Games and their bullshit. But Metro, anyway, when it did come, it launched at a lower price and then was on sale for a brief period. I believe it was the first launch week. So, the point being that they launched the game and the full price was still lower than the initial full price, as well as it fucking should be, because the game launched a year later and they were already paid multiple millions of dollars for the timed exclusivity of 1 year. Now, we were wondering with Borderlands 3 if this was going to be the same thing. Remember, bigger game, higher profile game than Metro Exodus, and only a 6-month deal. So, what was the deal with Borderlands 3? Was it going to launch? Was it a $60 game? Was it going to launch at $60? Was it going to launch at $50? $40? Was it going to launch at $30? What's the deal? Well, it turns out that these cunts, Randy Pitchford, one of the biggest motherfuckers in the universe, one of the biggest, that's right, I suppose biggest motherfuckers, worst motherfuckers, whatever you want to look at it. One of the motherfuckers that ever motherfuckered. There you go. 2K, Gearbox, they decided to be absolute 100% cunts. Because they decided that after taking millions and millions of dollars that they were going to, 6 months after launch this motherfucking game on Steam at full price. That's right, the full regular retail price for Borderlands 3 Base Edition on Steam is €60. That's full fucking price. For interest of clarity and keeping it 10 by 10, they do have a 1 week sale on there too, where you get 50% off each edition of the game, and you can basically pick up the base version of the game for €30. But again, it's the gall, the sheer audacity of these cunts, these pricks, and this fucking reject, Randy Pitchford, like a fucking tool. I called him out on Twitter, naturally didn't say anything because he's a cunt, but I am going to say one thing. I think this is absolute bullshit, abhorrent bullshit, all this, the usual thing. I've said it before with Metro Exodus and whatnot. But I am going to keep it real for 1 second. I told myself, as I professed on Twitter, that because of this bullshit, that they could fuck off. And I would not even wait to pick it up for €5 or €10 on a Steam sale. However, in the interest of transparency and keeping it real and being the true realest motherfucker on the internet, I open myself to ridicule. I hang my head in shame. And I admit that I broke my own pledge. I'm sorry. I did it. I bought Borderlands 3 on Steam. I accept all ridicule that anyone throws at me. It is 100% justified. I broke my own oath, my own creed, my own word, and I deserve all the ridicule I shall get. So I encourage you to leave it in the comment section. I will, of course, approve any of it that gets caught by YouTube's usual little bullshit, but I wholeheartedly accept it all. And I'm not happy with what I did. But, well, I have no self-control and I hate myself, as some people say. Super Deluxe Edition, by the way. €50. And that's with the 50% discount. Season Pass, game, couple of other DLC packs included and all as well. I'm sorry. I know I've let you down. I've let myself down as well. But more importantly, I've let you guys down. And for that, I really do apologize. I should have been better. I should have done better. It feels bad, man. But let's move on to some pretty good, but potentially bad stuff as well. And this one is going to talk about the Xbox Smart Delivery. This is something I talked about before in depth, but I'm going to bring it up again in a different way. And, well, we'll recap everything we know so far. So if you're not sure what the Smart Delivery is on this upcoming Xbox, well, it automatically updates to the best version of the game for the best version of your hardware. Let me give you some examples of that. So if you have a backwards compatible Xbox One game that is Xbox One X enhanced on your Xbox, it will download that version of the game so you can get the best experience of it on there too. The same way with if you have an Xbox One game that also has an Xbox, not an Xbox One X, but a Xbox version of the game available, it will download the Xbox version of the game for you onto your hardware. It'll realize, hey, this guy has a Xbox, we'll download that version of him, and it can go from there. Cyberpunk 2077 is the big example that everyone has been using here, because pretty famously so far, CD Projekt Red have said that they're basically going to be giving everyone a free Xbox upgrade when Cyberpunk 2077 becomes available on the Xbox. So even if you have the Xbox One version, When the Xbox version is available, you put your disc in, you boot up your digital copy, whatever it is, it will update and get you a free update to the Xbox version. Quality, frame rate, resolution, features, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Now, there are some caveats with this system we're going to look at. So, because this is a completely opt-in system, it's not a mandate that any company or developer has to not only opt into this, but they're not forced to do it, whatever it is. But it begs the big question. We're going to look at two big important ones in this topic here. Number one, will companies be charging for these updates? Will they be giving you the free version of the game? The free updated version, just like CD Projekt Red is with Cyberpunk 2077? Will they be doing the cheaper upgrade fees, if you will, like they did at the start of the 8th generation? You'd have a game like, I don't know, Battlefield or whatever on the 360, pay €10 and you could upgrade to the Xbox One version. So, will they be doing that? Or will they be selling remasters at full price like they typically have been doing pretty much all this generation as well? Now, it also makes you wonder too if Sony is going to do the same for the PS5. Now, we know basically nothing about the PS5 as it is at the moment, other than it will have proper PS4 backwards compatibility. But it begs a couple of questions. Are Sony going to jump in and do this kind of thing? Because, well, I suspect they will. Not just because it's a realistic feature afforded because of the hardware and the systems and all too. It doesn't matter if they originally had it planned or not, we just don't know right now. But because Microsoft have gone out of their way and announced it as a big feature, it wouldn't surprise me in any way, shape or form if Sony went out and copied this feature. Because it's a good feature. Imagine that. Imagine getting all your updates for games for your next gen stuff for free. That's brilliant. Especially because the consoles have native backwards compatibility. That's really good. So basically, let me give you an example. I am looking forward, very, very much looking forward to playing one of my 3 biggest hype games of 2020 later this year. Specifically on May 29th when The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. I'm going to be playing that on my PS4 Pro. It's probably going to run like shit. I imagine it's going to have a 30 FPS cap, which again is running like shit. But maybe there's a smart delivery equivalent on PS5. Maybe The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is a PS5 launch title. Maybe I can put my PS4 disc into my PS5 and get the PS5 version for free. It wouldn't surprise me if Sony copied this idea. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they only copied this and did it exclusively for free for first-party games. And then everyone else, other developers and all that, were opt-in, possibly sell you a remaster, possibly sell you a cheap upgrade fee. But anyway, later this year, we'll find out. Maybe next year, if they get delayed because of all this damn COVID-19 shit. And next up, we can talk a little bit about GameStop. Now, GameStop isn't just out of business just yet. However, it wouldn't surprise me if it did happen within the next couple of years. Although, we've been saying that for years at this point. Of course, I do believe that the launch of next gen will do them wonders for a few months. Mainly because everyone's going to be buying the consoles and accessories in there. As well as kind of the launch games and all that too. But after the console sales slow down a little bit, yeah. I think they're going to be in big trouble again anyway. But back to the point here. So, who do you think is applying for the job, and has actually got the job at this point, to potentially help GameStop turn their business around? That's right. That's right. I know you can't guess. Reggie Fils-Aimé. Mr. Nintendo himself. One of Mr. Nintendo. He has officially joined GameStop on the board of directors. And he is designed to, well, turn their business around and make it more lucrative and make it profitable again. Because, well, that's, what they do. Now, people, of course, are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very hesitant to believe Reggie from this. Because, well, you have to remember all these corporate suits are just lying shills anyway. Look at pretty much everything Reggie said when it came to the Switch and the Wii U. But, yeah, back to the point here. So, what can they do? What can Reggie do when it comes to saving GameStop? See, it's in a very, very precarious situation. GameStop makes their biggest margin on loot and on pre-owned stuff. But of course, digital sales are completely slaughtering everything right now. Digital sales increase year on year on year, and physical sales, both new and pre-owned, decrease year on year on year. Loot, of course, is a big problem within itself, and that just kind of all gets bought in en masse and doesn't really sell outside of one or two things. But it makes you wonder. They can't really do their own digital codes and marketplace, because if they start selling these games cheaper using codes and whatnot too, well, the companies won't be happy about that. Maybe they cut them off, or, well, maybe there's just not as much profit in it, or whatever it is. So it makes you wonder what they can do. We'll have to wait and see. I think they're just going down the shitter, and probably not even Reggie, his body ready and all, can probably do anything about it. Now it's time for our weekly Hold That L Fam segment, aka the weekly Google Stadia update. Of course, this one is another massive gigantic L for Google Stadia, this one in the form of Doom Eternal, because there's an L at the end of Eternal. Now, the big one for this as well is, I'll give you a quick reminder, quick little refresh, that Google Stadia prior to launch has said that games will run at the highest quality, the highest frame rates, 4K, true 4K as they call it, but typically it hasn't done that. Destiny, for example, runs at 1080p, 60 FPS, medium settings, and then it's upscaled on Google Stadia to look horrible on your screen and whatnot too. There's many other games that suffer from all of this as well. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2 on Google Stadia actually looks worse than a fucking console version. It looks worse than the Xbox One X version. Imagine that. Woo lad. And they of course went out and said, yeah, it's more powerful than all the current generation consoles. You know, we have, what did we say, 10.7 teraflops or some shit. I can't remember what it was. But the point is that, well, all this stuff, Google Stadia is a big load of bollocks. But let's pull it back for a second. We'll talk about Doom Eternal, this massive L for Google Stadia, and we'll take a little bit of a trip back. Because in GDC of 2019, Marty Stratton from Bethesda, he was on stage talking about how great Google Stadia was and how great Doom Eternal was. And he said, and he used these very, very specific terms when it came to Doom Eternal running on Google Stadia. True 4K resolution, which of course we know is 1340 by 2160 and nothing less. They used HDR and 60 frames per second. Well, guess what is not running at native true 4K HDR and 60 FPS on Google Stadia? That's right, it's Doom Eternal. Because Doom Eternal is running at 1080p. Sorry, that's not 1080p. Let me go over that one again. You'll see why I got the 8 and the 0 mixed up here. Doom Eternal is running at 1800p, 60 FPS. There, of course, is no mention of HDR on here as well, which is kind of curious, but the main important thing is that the true 4K resolution, HDR 60 FPS claim is no longer valid and no longer honored. Hold that L, Google Stadia, yet again. Which is kind of funny because this talks a lot and speaks a lot in volume about what we talked about earlier with the high system requirements for max settings. And they are outside of Google Stadia's capacity, clearly, at this point. Let me give an example. I almost mentioned it earlier in the other segment. If you want to play Doom Eternal with the maxed out of every setting at 4K 60 or at 1440p 120 FPS with the same quality settings, you need an Intel Core i9 9900K and an RTX 2080 Ti. Nothing less will suffice. Which is very, very interesting. Because remember when I was talking about Google Stadia and they were saying, yeah, we have so many amount of teraflops and whatever. Yeah, the RTX 2080 Ti has more power than a Google server. Imagine that. There is more teraflop computing performance in an RTX 2080 Ti, as evidenced by these settings and the compromised experience that you're getting. Get fucked, Google Stadia. Get royally fucked and hurry up and stop existing. But anyway, we'll talk about something that refuses to stop existing, thank fucking God. Blade Runner. Specifically, that is Westwood's Blade Runner on PC, the old point-and-click one that I've mentioned several times and that I recommend to everyone. And now, thankfully, to pretty much everyone, it's going to be getting an enhanced edition, which is pretty damn interesting, especially when you consider that recently a team behind Scum VM and Night Dive Studios worked together to get the old original version slightly updated and reverse engineered and working on modern PCs. So basically, if you have your old, incredibly old school PC version, you could download Scum VM and run it using that. If not, it's also now available on GOG, which is pretty damn good, and it works well on all modern operating systems. But because of all that work from Scum VM and Night Dive Studios, they are now releasing the enhanced remastered edition on Steam, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. So they've talked a little bit about it. It will be coming out at some point in 2020. No exact release date or month yet that I could find anywhere or ascertain. But they've talked a little bit about it, and they said there's going to have increased and improved and remastered and new models, animations, the cutscenes are going to be upscaled, as well as it's going to have widescreen support and more. Now, I recommend this game highly to everyone, especially if you're an old school point and click fan. I will say this, if you're more modern and more new school, this game will be fucking rock hard for you out there. You will really need to use that brain that you probably haven't developed because, well, pretty much all modern games are so damn dull, they don't make you think for anything. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to try it out. I'll probably buy this myself. And it's going to be very interesting to see how all the kiddies these days just need to check out video guides and FAQs and whatnot just to get past something very rudimentary for the 90s, at least anyway. Get erect, kiddies. Damn millennials. Kids these days, am I right? So before we get to everyone's favourite segment, and of course the best segment of the show, well, I do want to muse and reminisce on something ever so slightly. I've always mentioned that I believe every game should come to PC because it will be the best version of every game ever made, which is completely true, by the way. But one of the more appealing things to me, and remember, I say this as a retro gamer, someone who loves playing on original hardware, someone who has all these consoles, these old school TVs, whatever it is, the cables, anything I need to be able to play it in its original form as well. And this is someone who still has all these physical games, these old school physical games that they can use on this old school physical retro hardware as well. However, convenience, not just convenience, but part and parcel of the platform comes into play as well. We all know that the currently upcoming, I should say, next generation consoles are touting backwards compatibility for certain stuff. The Xbox, for example, has backwards compatibility with some OG Xbox 180 titles, some 360 titles, and pretty much all Xbox One titles. And the PS5, as we know it at the moment, only has backwards compatibility with the PS4 titles. But with the PC library, you basically have access to, well, the entire history and library of PC, which is really damn appealing. That you can open up Steam or whatever client or whatever it is, or hell, maybe even put it in the discs if you want, and install games from there. Sure, if it's really super old, you might need to do a little bit of tinkering in order to get it to work, but it can typically be done. That's the main important thing. And in the current era where you have all the digital stuff, be it anything from the last 10, 12, 15 years on Steam, or some super old school obscure stuff on the likes of GOG, you still have access to it at a couple of clicks away, which is the most important one. And you have access to all of this whenever you want, wherever you want, pretty much forever. However, with consoles, they are helping a little bit with this, with the backwards compatibility and all too. But the problem is its select backwards compatibility. I mean, there's so many OG Xbox 180 games that I would love to play, even if it's just in their regular form by just putting them into my Xbox One X or my upcoming Xbox, but it's not meant to be. The same way with the 360, you know, there's only certain games you can put on there. And of course, PS4, as it stands at the moment, you miss out on 3 entire generations of PlayStation games. So it's not really that great and convenient when it comes to backwards compatibility. It's very, very limited in that regard. So that's why I love the PC library. I can open Steam right now and I can just click in and install games from a few days ago, from a few weeks ago, from last year, from the year before, from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and 99% of the time they will just work straight out. You can't beat that. Native PC versions for the win. PC library and PC backwards compatibility for the win. But anyway, we can hit our final best segment, the reason why everyone is here. As always, Q, what's up? What's going down? What's the 411? What's going on? What are you doing? What are you playing? Well, unfortunately, Comic-Con for me yesterday, well, what would have been yesterday, was cancelled. It was cancelled 2 days before it was scheduled to take place. It was cancelled on Thursday, so I had to cancel my trip, or at least part of the trip. Usually we go up the Friday, stay up there, we'd do our shopping and see some sights, do the usual bullshit. We'd hit up the con on the Saturday, do some more shopping and whatever after it, and then we'd come home. However, that wasn't the case this year. Cancelled the hotel, did my usual shit just around here on Friday, but then we went up as a day trip on Saturday. However, this is where it gets a little bit dicey. Between all the coronavirus and the public health scares and whatnot, the retro store that I have not properly frequented in over a year, probably about close to a year and a half. I was in there once, but within that time, but I zoned out completely because a friend of mine wanted to go in and I didn't want to look at a single thing. So I just kind of stood there and you know, when your eyes kind of just unfocus and you're completely elsewhere. Yeah, that happened because I didn't want to see anything. So, yeah, I was looking to make my, I can't call it triumphant return to retro game collecting because, as I've mentioned, I am pretty much done with retro game collecting. But because I had been out of even buying a retro game for so long, I was looking to perusing what they had and maybe picking up 1 or 2 small titles, nothing super rare or obscure, something or super expensive, just something I wanted to play that might have caught my eye at the time. However, unfortunately, we did not go there first, and they posted up that they had closed early to disinfect and sanitize the entire store about an hour before we were scheduled to go. Basically, we were going to finish up where we were and then go to that place. And they posted about an hour prior. So that one was very, very rough. And that kind of annoyed the shit out of me. And then when you combine that with the fact that I spent way too long looking for a new bike gear and I couldn't even find the exact one I wanted because they were sold out of it and I had to get it shipped to me and whatnot. It should be here later this week. But yeah, it was not a good day overall. It was not a great day. Sure, I enjoyed hanging out with my friend in Dublin and all, but it just kind of annoyed me in that way. That was the big thing I was looking forward to, and that kind of screwed me over. So what I'm going to do actually is probably this week on one of my days off, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to call them, make sure they're open, see if they're planning on closing early or whatever. I'm going to jump on the bike and I'm going to ride right on up and check all that stuff out to vindicate myself and go over what we missed. But anyway, that's not so much what am I playing. That's just a little bit of a venting segment and all there too. But my big hype at the moment is for Doom Eternal and for one step down from that, Animal Crossing. Both of these games are out this coming Friday, but Doom Eternal is my far bigger, far more hype of the two games. Now, having said that, I am currently in a gaming existential crisis. The fact that I can't really start any big games in the meantime because I probably won't have them done by the time Doom comes out. So, I'm just kind of hovering about and bouncing between smaller projects, if you will. Secret of Mana being the big one at the moment. I'm using that to kill some time, playing it on the PVM on the old school Super Nintendo with some RGB SCART. Looks, plays absolutely gorgeous. But I might even finish that tonight, maybe tomorrow, if I kind of stretch it out. So the big problem in there is, what do I do after that? I have a couple more days to kill. Hint, hint, Bethesda. Launch the thing early, because we're all damn stuck inside with this fucking coronavirus. But anyway, that is it for our 49th episode. We are still rapidly approaching our 1 year anniversary of our Quack experimental podcast. It's due out at the end of the month. I believe it will be the 51st episode on the 29th. That should be our 1 year anniversary. But anyway, until then, of course, let me know in the comments section below any thoughts, feelings, opinions, salt, butthurt, whatever it is, on anything we talked about today. And also, that extra ridicule that I truly and rightfully deserve over the whole Borderlands 3 thing. In the comment section as well. Hit the appropriate button to let me know I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not head on over and hit the subscribe button and even ring that little notification bell. That way, you can be one of the first people to get notified when one of these glorious little high production styling and profiling episodes comes out every weekend. Until then, thanks everyone for watching, and remember, winners don't play switch ports.